Welcome to the Be Global by Design podcast, where we talk to creatives, designers, and change makers from around the world about the importance of arts, culture, and design to creating communities where we want to live. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe so you know when new episodes are released. Today, we are talking to Olivia Hutchinson and Steve Voller, two musicians, about the impact of music in communities and in systems that we encounter every day. Steve has created and played music for over 30 years and is in the process of earning his Certified Music Practitioner certificate. Olivia, an opera singer by background, has recently launched the Practice Support Hub, a unique business opportunity with working with kids and supporting kids who need to practice between lessons and adults who want to devote more time to learning or practicing an instrument. Welcome, Olivia. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good.
Okay. Let's talk about music. You both look at music as means for healing at the individual level and within communities. Tell me some of your experiences in seeing this play out.
Oh, okay. I'll go. I've got so within this community that I run, Practice Support Hub, I work with a lot of adults who have like traumatic backgrounds in terms of like someone telling them something cruel about their voice in particular with singing. And because singing is such a personal, deeply intimate thing because you are the instrument, that kind of communication can hit hard and land for a really long time. And one of the things we do in Practice Support Hub is once a month we have online I call them spotlight recitals. So you can practice standing in the spotlight, but and like surviving, and then also shine a spotlight on music that like you really care about. And this one guy who, God bless him, he comes like every month. He has a
Huh?
fantastic tenor voice,
Yeah.
and he got so much garbage for just wanting to sing because he grew up in like Pittsburgh and with a family that was like, we don't sing. And he's like a dad, right? He's whatever, middle-aged. And every month he comes, he sings Phantom of the Opera, he sings like classical music, he sings all this stuff, and he's got a terrific tenor voice. And this space allows him to like heal the fear and anxiety that he had around performance without it having to be, in a karaoke situation or like a big concert or auditioning for something, right? And and I feel like music can just be very healing, very like the act of putting yourself in front of people, even a small group, a safe group,
Yeah.
and hearing them like see you, like being seen and making music in front of them and not dying and not having it be super high stakes. I think that kind of thing heals individuals and families and communities. I really do.
What about
You
you, Steve?
yeah,
What's your
you just
experience?
I wasn't even thinking of this, but you just reminded me of the transaction that takes place because often, or at least when you asked the question, Kristen, I was thinking healing from one to another, or at least providing a space for that to occur, which is part of where I'm coming from, as you mentioned with my CMP, the Certified Music Practitioner program it's from MHTP, which is Music and Healing Transition Program, and the approach is often from the individual or the musician in this case to the patient, to the individual. And I love the way that you put that about this gentleman's singing being healing for him, which of course, we know it is. It's not just from the musician, say, to the person, but it's also for the musician as well, regardless of where they are. So there's a mutual transaction
Yeah.
happening
Yeah,
within that
totally.
environment that is it's really beyond us. We have studies, we have science, we have statistics. As a matter of fact, I have a few I'll share about the impacts of music. That aspect and that notion from one to another, regardless of how you approach, I have no doubt because I've experienced it myself that even though you may think you may be leading something or driving or even initiating, all
Hmm.
true, very well, there is still another level. It's like in communication. It's another form of communication.
Yeah,
The three of us
absolutely.
talking, and I'm moving my hands, and that's sending some cues, whether I mean to or not. It's sending cues in terms of how we communicate with each other beyond just my words. So the same with music, right? So we have our notes, and we have certain notes, and we have ways of framing, and we have dynamics, and we have all these tools within that major tool itself. And then how do we convey, how do we share, how do we build together?
Yeah.
And
Which
I
me
think that's where
too.
healing takes place ultimately.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Something that came to mind is that we can engage in music in kind of one of two ways. One where we play exactly what's on the page, right?
Mhm.
And perform exactly what's on the page. And of course, in a classical
Sure.
background, that's often what's going on unless you're improvising, which I think is another kind of a special thing. But when you're playing exactly what's on the page, you have a way of controlling the experience minus nerves, like, down to your breathing. And who can say that about public speaking, really, right? Like, you've got this thing that you can kind of control all the way through. And then at the next level, improvisation, like being willing to explore something in front of people. It just
Yeah.
strikes me that there's kind of levels of being able to, like, expose yourself emotionally in front of people that you can kind of prepare for and execute that can help you grow in confidence that you wouldn't get just by being alone and making music at home, but by preparing something and then sharing it with people, even if it's super casually, right? Like, you can kind of control the outcome as best you can according to your skill level, right?
Yeah.
Um, if you're,
Yeah.
I don't know, what came to mind.
See, wonderful.
Yeah.
Something else I didn't think of that makes sense though is breathing and breath.
Yeah,
So you're coming at it from a singer's point of view, which is essential and critical, support and awareness. After a while, it's muscle memory and all that. But depending on how well you slept or ate or what's going on emotionally, you
yeah,
have to be cognizant of that. But what happens as you have that awareness, whether it's on autopilot or you're like, oh, I really got to get this, I got to breathe properly, support this, whatever it is. But what happens to either the audience or the individual? They, depending on what it is, they also have a sense of breathing, which is a big
Yeah.
part of therapeutic music. It's a part of literally trying to control their breathing because you might walk into a room and somebody's really anxious and their heart rate is just like la 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 because
yeah,
they're nervous or they don't know what's going on. They might be a little out of it. I mean, there's a thousand circumstances, but the key point is their heart rate. And so what do you try to do as you're saying you want to control that? And from you, it's with a breath. And what happens to the breath as heart rate slowly reduces? It takes time, but as it comes down,
yeah,
then we have that breath, we have that release. And that's sort of a signal that we often, regardless of what it might be, even in conversation, think about when you're talking to
yeah,
somebody, whether it's heated or not, or there's some point you're trying to get through. If you see them breathe or you feel yourself, because there might be some anxiety behind it, you're at a different playing field of where you can start to communicate or continue that communication, and then you go on from there. That's beautiful. Thanks for bringing
yeah.
that.
So, Steve, you were talking a little bit, you mentioned some statistics on impact. Explain a little bit what CMP is and why is music therapeutic?
Yeah, so CMP, so Certified Music Practitioner, is a certification or designation within the Music and Healing Transition Program. And transition in this case means death. It's to that. So there are five primary patient categories, and it could be anywhere. Let's just say on the basic level, maybe they're just leaving the hospital. Maybe they had a treatment in and out, and they might just want to, they might want to hear some live music just as they're waiting, just something to do. They don't have a book or their phone is boring and whatever it might be. They can have that experience, but then there are other conditions that pursue the anxiousness being one of them. Higher heart rate, but right up to transition. And that is, as a matter of fact, extremely breath based. That you want to follow those cues because in that category, it's called unstructured music. So you don't have a typical pulse. You don't have, I mean, that's kind of funny. I mean, in terms of the beat, the rhythm,
Yeah,
um, you don't have that pulse, you don't have the melody, the harmony, the chordal structure. It's just a music for the sake of, I would say, helping along in that transition. So that can happen. That's an aspect. So it's pretty much a range of how music can be applied. In this case, at least for the certification, the majority of the practicum hours are in the hospital, literally at the bedside
Okay.
of a
Yeah.
patient.
Oh, wow.
It's not a CD you record with a certain intention or anything like that, and I'm gonna play some Bach pieces, that's all
Yeah.
wonderful, but the cue is the human interaction, which is where
Mhm.
therapy and healing takes place,
Yeah,
particularly
big
in
time.
music, because you're watching, you're interacting, right? You're having that conversation
Yeah.
with that individual, which is it gives me chills, and it's such an honor to be, and I'm not there yet. I'm working to get to the practicum, but I have had a little experience in prior classes, and to be in that environment with somebody who, it's the range. You're really at another soul on an emotional level, and if you just approach it with an open heart and even receptively, it's not just about, okay, I'm here and I'm going to do this. That's a nice intent, and the service is wonderful. But to be able to have that dialogue, that communication, that experience, to me is a true honor, because basically that person may have been in a really say unstable state, or even not a very good emotional state for various reasons, and if we can just move them over, even if it's for 5 minutes or 20 minutes while that's there, I believe that's it's essential, and it's an honor to be a part of that.
That gives me chills. Oh my gosh. I
Wonderful.
was in the hospital, for an emergency surgery over the holidays, and I was there for an
Mm,
extended period of time because while my surgery was important, it in terms of triage, it kept getting pushed back and back and back over Christmas. And,
It's rough.
if
That's
someone
rough.
had and I was quite isolated too, like, I had a couple my family came and visited me once a day, but, I was alone a lot. And if someone had come and played guitar for me or something, and oh my gosh, I can only
uh,
imagine, like, the effect that that would have had
I'll
to
see,
just be
and
visited by someone and have them play some because this is not the same, not by a long shot.
exactly. Exactly, and it can react, and it's more you have to find, or maybe a nurse, and, I mean, maybe you're listening to classical, your favorite music, but I'm pretty certain if it's just maybe your favorite symphony, there's gonna be music in there, maybe it's an allegro part of it that's like, "Whoa," that's not what we wanted, we want just adagios,
Yeah, yeah,
or, it might be too much, it might be overwhelming,
yeah,
and even though you do wanna stimulate emotion at a certain point, because how do we move emotionally? Our triggers, we have trauma, we have good and bad memories. We
Yeah.
usually want to meet those with another emotion, but we don't want to get stuck there. And sometimes it's not the right time to be there. We got to move to another place to where we can actually take it on. Otherwise, then we become reactive to it. And the other thing I just wanted to add real quick, that's beautiful to hear, because, and some people don't. They may
yeah,
not want to hear it, and that's completely understandable and respectable.
yeah,
Silence, wonderful too. But it's also not necessarily just about the individual, because some people might be incapacitated, and so maybe there's a family member there, that happens quite often, and the family member, now, although side note, we know that person will hear and feel whatever's
Yeah.
being played, even if they're,
yeah,
not
Of
not
course.
right. They might not be able to speak to us or look at us, but ears, and you guys may know, hearing is the last thing to go before
Yeah,
before we pass.
oh, I
So
didn't know that, that's
it's a
cool.
whole other
it
beautiful
is.
subject as well, but,
Wow.
so that's all a piece of it to be mindful of, but so the family member, may have, because the family member, that can be that role, that responsibility, that may help them, or even the nurse or staff member who is going stressed from beeping machine to beeping machine, and so
Right.
many client or patients to get through, and whatever that might be, they've been there 12 hours or whatever it is, they haven't had
Yeah,
lunch, they're overworked, underpaid, all that stuff. And maybe they just hear something that's really gentle and soft, whether it's in that room or in the hallway, because that's also an option as well. Um, the idea is that it can be a centering point to really reset the heart and go, okay, why are we here? Okay, let's go forth. And so, yeah, a lot of different angles from it.
so beautiful.
So let's move a little bit to like a community conversation. Why do you think live music is important to communities? We know that it adds economic
Mm.
value and things, but what about livability and why do we need live music?
Well, okay, I've been thinking about this. So, for one thing, like live music is collaborative in just in how it's put together, unless you're doing solo work, right? And so
Mm,
a community can be like a huge community and it can be four people, right? But when you're putting together a piece of work, a piece of music, and everyone has got their piece to play, they are figuring out how to sync it up and how to bring their own point of view, their own tone, their own approach into the music. And then to be able to share that with someone who's listening. I was just thinking just now, sort of like at the bedside, you're facing each other when
mm,
you're listening to recorded music, you're not facing anyone. You're not looking at the person who's making it. And that connection, I mean, can I, you probably can both remember the first live show you went to after COVID, right? And how
Yeah.
hugely different that was from sitting at home at
Yeah.
listening to whatever, grateful that it's there, right? But then the moment that you can show up with a bunch of other people
yeah.
and
And
yeah,
dance
and
with others to it,
Yeah.
right?
yeah, yeah, totally, and even things like street fairs,
Mm,
I live on a street that has a street fair in the summer times and brings out thousands of people to listen to bands, and I think the Taylor Swift Eras Tour that has gotten millions of attendees shows that even if you're totally saturated with the music of someone that you love, showing up to be in person in an experience with other people and watching them perform it is
It's
its
different.
own thing. It's its
Yeah.
own thing, right? And it's beautiful. And I mean, one thing that I love about Montreal is that there's a big busking tradition and in the metros. And so lots of people perform. I perform in the metro. I love performing in the metro. And
great acoustic.
um it was really scary at first, actually.
Of course.
It's one of the scariest things I'd ever done. You go and you set up your music and you realize, like, it can be sort of an intensely personal thing because the people are just going by. But then when you connect with someone because I remember singing Moon River and this older gentleman walked by and he gave me, I don't know, 50 cents or whatever, but he gave me this smile that was like, you like Moon River and I like Moon River,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And I
Exactly.
was like, "That was worth everything," you know? And
Yes.
I think the more that communities can foster music in schools, because that's all live, right? And kids figuring out how to coordinate music with each other and how to I mean, my son just figured out he really loves the drums, right? And so
Cool.
he's figuring that out at school. Like having strong music programs in schools can help kids to keep from shutting up and, judging themselves too hard, too early. And then having, I think, any chance that we have to foster live music events at various levels of sort of like amateur to professional community, whatever. I don't know.
There's
Renders me speechless. So
there
important.
there's I
Yeah.
don't have the statistics, but there's an awareness that in certain areas, particular in inner cities, where there are music programs. So not only in school, but let's say it's been taken out of school for budget reasons and all that, which to me is criminal, but we know that's where it's at.
Yeah.
But there are some cities that have after school programs, often completely funded by, certain investors or part of the community or, people who are really even musicians. Um, one of is it Flea from the Chili Peppers? I think he started a program. Several bands and artists have started programs, but the thing is that after school, these kids go. They don't have to buy anything. Everything is there. The guitars are there. The drums are there. The percussion,
Yeah.
and then what maybe they request, violin, some strings, whatever it might be, but as kids gravitate and, well, a few things. So the kids show up. They're just there. So it's a hangout place. It's a place to be off the streets. Not necessarily
Yeah.
that you're the troublemaker, but maybe trouble finds you. You're in the wrong place, wrong time. That eliminates that, because you're there. And then it also gives the students a medium or a means to find their voice. And I don't necessarily mean their physical voice, although that can certainly be their singers, microphones, a PA, all that's great. But just a musical voice
Sure.
that we all have. We're all
Yeah.
musical. We can get into the fetus, the heartbeat, the first things that babies hear, and the mom and all. It's all beautiful. Even music. So that's an aspect, but kids can find their voice, and what that does, they may not be a musician, or really they're not going to go home and practice 5 hours. That's fine. But they have that place. Kind of reminds me of what you're talking about with the opera singer, that gentleman, that he has a voice, in this case, a physical voice, and you bring that into the world. So
Yeah.
maybe you're a great basketball player, or you're a great animator. You love math, whatever it is. But if you find that you can express yourself in a creative way, not that those are creative as well in a different way, but you can bring that same approach, and that, I would say, even confidence to whatever you're doing, or as you find your stride in the world, and then all your relationships, because it impacts your relationships with your peers, your parents, your teachers,
Yeah,
your community, the store
totally.
clerk down the road that you're buying apples from, or
Oh, yeah.
Doritos, or, it impacts everything.
Well, and it also builds community, I would say. So I'm not a musician. But I learned how to play West African drums, the djembe drum, when I lived in Chicago. And one of the women in the class, we used to just go to Lake Michigan, and we would play the drums every once in a while. And then when I lived in Los Angeles, every Sunday on the beach, there were drum circles. And also in Chicago, there were like drum circle meetups. And there's some sort of energy, and people are just playing. There's no system. There's 30, 40 people all banging on their drums. But it's an overwhelmingly emotional experience to just be with this group of people and just playing.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say too, thinking about community, there are these certain things in our society that we can participate in, um, all together, that don't force us to highlight our differences with each other. You can have people who have wildly different ideas on very polarizing ideas, like politics, for instance. But if the two or five or 10 or 300 of them are coming together in a drum circle, or to play, jazz or a rock song or an orchestral piece or something like that, then they have a common language and even a common goal that sets aside the things that make them different. I think sports is another way um, that does this, because the goal, you can all come together on this specific thing. I think when people work together to heal the environment, that's another one where we can kind of like let go of who we think should be president at any given time, and like focus on picking up trash or something. But since we're talking about music, I think it's when they call it the universal language or whatever. I think it can be something that people who care about any given musical project can jump in, and there's not like, you don't have to be the same as the other people who are also participating. And if someone is wanting to bring more harmony to their city or to their community,
Yeah.
I can't think of an easier way to do that than to sponsor community music projects that help people. Not to say that music isn't political, 'cause I would not dishonor music in that way, right? Bob Dylan would disagree, and that's great, right? Like, you can come together for music projects and sort of line up with your ideas, and that's terrific, like, we all need our, like, torch songs for stuff. But there is the possibility of pulling people together in a way that helps people to set aside differences and work on this other common goal, which I think um, is super valuable when people want to find out what's different from each other and sort of slot them out. But like, if you all like Van Halen, then play Van Halen, right? Like, if you're
Yeah.
all, if you all like Dixieland, then let's do some of that, right?
Sure.
Anyway.
So we've talked about then like community impact. We've talked a little bit about systems and how music impacts health systems, mental health. We've talked about education systems, depolarization. But let's talk a little bit about like businesses, corporations, nonprofits, and other people, places that employ people. How can
I
music help those, like a corporation? For example, like an executive or sales team or something like that.
So Practice Support Hub is new. We've been operating for about a year, and it mostly is to help individuals to get up the courage to practice at home and to build up their skill level so that they can do these kinds of things, so that they have the capacity to play through a whole song or to participate in an orchestra or whatever. And that work of working day in and day out can be challenging. So when we get together in weekly practice together sessions that are Zoom meetings where we chat at the beginning and at the end, but then of an average hour, and then they turn the camera off and audio often works solo, and then we come back and kind of cheer them on and say good job. Um, I've been working on a pilot program for a corporate wellness type experience where I feel like a lot of corporations that want to help their employees to um, develop better personal habits often focus on health. And I think something that could be very interesting if a corporation wanted to help its employees outside of the office in some wellness program is to give them something like what I'm putting together to help people with music practice if they have an instrument they care about in their off hours when they're home from work and they're tired and they would rather scroll or binge watch something. And I think if a CEO or a manager knew that they had employees that were musical or who cared about music, I think it could be really cool when they're thinking about incentives or ways to make their workplace more interesting to bring music into the office, certainly, but also something like what we're doing might be interesting to help people foster better practicing habits when they're at home, kind of to build their music into their daily life. Because it can often be something that you sort of hope for and aspire to, and then you buy your instrument, and then like your life hasn't really changed. You have to figure out how to make that like slot into your life, right? Like if your life is a round hole and you bought a square peg guitar, like how are you going to make those two actually work together, right? And I think a something like a corporate wellness program, if they reached out and said, like, "Who are the musicians here?" And if they were to have, like, like a jam session at the end or, like, a little talent show
Yeah.
at the end of the whole thing, be like, "Okay, you've put in
Right.
12 weeks of practice. Have you got anything to show for it?" Right? And then that
Right.
could sort of help people communicate with each other or, like, share with each other. I think it could be kinda cool.
Music.
Kind of like
Seems
Yeah.
like fun. I'd
a,
love to actually pull it to put together.
a Toastmasters club for musicians.
Yeah, oh, yeah, totally.
I love that idea because certain corporations already do that in terms of exercise. Like, for example, they have a gym, they have maybe yoga programs in the morning. Depending on where they are, they have different programs. And what are each of these potential programs is their tool. And music is no different. And as a matter of fact, we know it has a high degree of impact because if you go into an office, what are the chances that you see 85% of people with earbuds? Not in a meeting. I'm just saying, they're doing their work and they have headphones on. Or as we see when people are traveling around, they're going from train to train or even in airports. It doesn't matter. People are always listening to music. Or even I'm thinking I have one in mind when we see CEOs come and they talk, um, what's going on in the background? A whole bunch of rah rah music, get everybody hyped up, and there's
Yeah,
streamers and there's fun. And so it's there, but so much of our culture, because it's so ubiquitous in the means that we can get to it, which is a blessing, we also, I would say, take it for granted. It's great that it has just been so diffused in our human anatomy and our
yeah,
neurology that it can be at that level. But there's so much going on that if we could have a focused or concentrated effort or purpose, like you're saying, if this were a corporate wellness program,
Yeah.
that's completely different from something I might be doing in the hospital, you know,
Right.
um,
Sure.
maybe to the same end or in a community, right?
Right.
Getting a bunch of kids together or having a dedicated venue for live music from 6 to 9 every night, you know,
Yeah.
or, in bars, whatever it might be in the area, restaurants, just that aspect of that relationship of live, but music, it's everywhere. I mean, our movies, imagine watching Netflix with no music.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean,
yeah,
it changes. So there's an emotional tool or component translating, conveying those emotions. And if you direct that specifically, obviously in a Netflix series or whatever, that music is directed specifically. When you're writing music for film, you have a sheet that says, we're trying to provoke this emotion. And
yeah,
so you compose for that. It would be the same in a certain wellness, a corporate wellness program versus a hospital with a venue, maybe a jazz club where they also eat as well. And we touched on this before about music being a nutrient. So if you're in a restaurant, you could
Yeah.
have a guy in the corner or a couple guys just playing really soft, not as a performance. Hey, look at me, watch me, but
Yeah.
just accompanying. They're like a seasoning, or maybe even more. They are a nutrient in the food that the people are eating, having their conversation. They're not even aware of it necessarily, but the musicians are well aware that everything they play is a part of that experience they're having with their dinner, not only with their
Sure.
dinner, but with maybe their spouse or their neighbor or their child, whatever it might be, but that is playing a role in it. So it's not necessarily the be all end all, although as a musician I might say it is, but it's a tool that we can use, and if we focus what we're using it for, rather than just like, well, yeah, music, it's everywhere. Well, yeah, we know that, and that's great, but focus it, and then we can make it a greater impact to where it could be a means to a specific outcome.
I love that. I had a goofy idea too. Like how interesting would it be if an office had a music room
Yeah.
that was soundproofed, that had like a piano in it? We've
Mm.
got office gyms, and I worked at an office in Oakland, California, that had a nap room, small, right?
Yeah,
Sure.
right.
Beanbag chairs and stuff. What
Yeah.
if you had a music room and it was soundproof and someone could show up at the office with their instrument and, like, a little checkout sign on the wall, or like some sort of scheduling thing, or a couple of them, if we've got people working from home and you've got some empty offices, right?
Yeah.
What if
Yeah,
you had like spaces at the office where people could, on their breaks or on their lunch or before or after or whatever, um bring their instrument and practice or
Well,
sing?
I think you'd even use it as a way to intentionally have people work better together, right? Because, like, a lot of the work that I do is writing proposals. M- Vast majority of my career has been writing proposals and designing programs, and it requires different voices. People have to kind of agree and figure out, how do we tell this story in one voice? We all have different ideas. How do we bring it together into one? And it strikes me that that's very similar. Running a team is very similar to trying to get a band to work together, right? There's a lot of different instruments, a lot of different things people are bringing to it, and you want to be able to capture all of that, but you also want to be able to tell one story. Otherwise, it's chaos, right? You could use it to train people, I would think.
absolutely.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
if you were to bring in a coach or something and be like, "We're gonna figure out how to play, Stand By Me,
Yeah,
and we've got these drums, and we're gonna put on a show at the next, like, all hands meeting or something, and, like, pick out 4 people who've never played music before, and they can just figure it out." Why not?
yeah,
that's awesome. I never thought so. You see all these videos of people doing team building exercises.
yeah.
Some are
The
beautiful,
show!
some are frightening and scary, and like, what's going on here? But I've never seen that as an
Create
option that
create a
people.
song.
Yeah,
Your team
yeah,
building
right.
experiences, go in a
Because what is
studio for an hour and a half, write
right.
a song, write music, and figure out how to play
Right.
it.
That'll completely change the dynamic of that team, that trust and that being vulnerable, because that's what so
Right.
much of, putting that out. I mean, actually right back to your opera singer at the beginning, that's a vulnerability, and people are shut down, as we know, a lot of people in the workplace especially. They're there for one reason, sure, but a lot of them have other ambitions, and why aren't they seeking them? Well, because they've been told, their voice, whatever that might be, it's been shut down. There's a trauma. And
Yeah,
so that could be a part of healing. And it doesn't necessarily mean, oh, okay, they're going to go pursue something else, but they bring that to their work. They bring that to their project.
Sure.
They bring that to their coworkers, and it completely changes the dynamic of the environment.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that, we talk about corporate wellness and things, but there's a growing body of evidence that just playing music in warehouses in your
Mm,
supply chain increases efficiency and productivity. So I think that there's a lot of evidence of ways that companies and corporations, nonprofits, institutions can really take this idea of live music and
yeah,
really incorporate it into what they're doing. And I'm not going to say it's innovative because we've always had music, but we're just, I think, finding new ways to like apply what we've always done and what's part of our environment in new ways that help us to accomplish whatever other goals that we have.
exactly. Exactly.
well,
Another
yeah, I
tool.
mean, in the office environments that I've ever been in, I've never seen any element of music or art being employed by, HR or the higher ups or anything to do anything at the office, right? It was all just basically, sort of hitting it directly instead of obliquely with like interpersonal skills or whatever, right? But finding these other, more roundabout almost ways to help people work with each other and not with trust falls necessarily. I think well, and it helps you to like get to know other people well too when you sort of find out what their talents are and what their tastes are and things like
Sure.
that.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
makes me think that I'm thinking of a CEO or maybe even a senior manager or director or something. And I'm thinking, well, they have to give the okay probably, and they have to be vulnerable. And a lot of times they might not want to be at least in that facet. They want to direct and they want to be the leader and they don't want to show a certain side. That's understandable. But it makes me think that maybe there's rather than it being within because there's so many companies, maybe it's a group that facilitates it.
Yeah.
So, you go in kind of like with other wellness programs. What do? They hire an outside third party vendor.
Right.
They're the experts. They come in and they might have 100 clients in different corporations, and they go and they facilitate this program because even let's say a director says, "Yeah, I love that." Let's say I'm a director, and I'm like, "I love that idea. Let's do it." I'm still within my one environment, and I have to
Yeah,
be on
totally.
how far can we make that, at least for a cultural impact, to a whole other level. But as small as it is, no matter what, even if it's just impacting one person, I have no doubt that it's still in the right direction.
Sure. And I think, and that's why I created Be Global by Design. And you two are both founding members of Be Global. And it's really to bring these ideas in and bring people like say, hey, there's new ways you can do this. Why, bring us in. What is the problem that you're trying to solve? Is it
Right.
productivity? Is it teamwork? Is it, wellness? What are you trying to solve? Because we have a lot of creative minds who have seen a lot of stuff and done a lot of things. And we can maybe think about your problem. We understand your bottom line and you need a return on investment. We get that, but we can probably like slice this in different ways that you might not have thought of before and come up with something like really unique that might be more impactful than sort of
Yeah.
the standard solutions that might be out there. So tell me a little bit about your guys's why. Why do you do what you do?
Oh. Okay, I'll tell you why I do what I do, because I taught voice and piano for like 1,000 years, and when you say at the top of a lesson, "How did practicing go?" They begin the story of why they did not practice or how it didn't work out or whatever. And I thought, is there a way that I can help? Is there a way that I can provide something that's a little beyond an online accountability app that's like human interaction and human accountability to help someone slog through at the piano, right? Or to slog through their scales or whatever. And I think and then also to give people an opportunity to perform in a way that's much lower stakes than what we see in the world. And one thing that sort of drives me crazy is that between how much competition is like tied up with music, thinking about things like television shows that are music talent shows, and the way even when people put music onto YouTube, the comment sections are often just
Harsh.
very judgmental, right?
Yeah.
That can be such a huge I sometimes think about like what music making was like before the record player was invented. When if you wanted music in your home, you had to make it. And if you wanted it there, like nobody was listening to recorded music before 1877, I think it was, right? Like if you
Interesting.
wanted it there, it was
Never
live
thought
and it
about
was
that.
communal or it was nothing, right? And then we sort of let the professionals into our homes and they did it beautifully, and we said, "Well, I don't need to. We just listen to them. We'll put on a record, right? We'll put on a CD or whatever." I wanna sort of claw back amateur music making, like live amateur music making, both the supporting of the skill set to get to being able to do it, right? Your 10,000 hours to get to Carnegie Hall or whatever, because you cannot get away from being alone practicing, right? But if that is all you ever do, you'll stop. I really think you'll stop. If you
Yeah.
don't, some ways of putting it in front of someone or collaborating, unless you're Sherlock Holmes and that's all you need, that's great too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I respect it. I totally respect it. But I think for a lot of people, throwing it in front of someone who's not going to eviscerate you or doing it together with someone and have it being communal, um, is is kind of golden. That is my big why is to not have this massive divide between like amateur and professional and student, and instead just think about what is the music you want to do, what is the skill set you need to have to develop it. And um, and I've put together this structure to try to help people integrate that into real life that involves soccer schedules and busy work. And and I think the other thing is because I put training videos up on the in the app for people to watch, and one of them is like how to show up for your practice sessions. And one of the biggest things people talk about that I talk in there is being heard. And how do you handle being heard by your neighbors, by your family members, by your children? If you're playing the trumpet or singing or drums, you have a real issue of being heard. I mean, I go to the gym at the YMCA most mornings, and there's a woman who plays the flute in a yoga studio almost every single morning at like 6 in the morning. And I
Wow.
I haven't wanted to bug her because she's in her bubble. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I'm like,
Yeah.
why are you here? Like, why are you
Right?
here now? Right? And I'm so curious, but I don't want to bug her. I might, but so far I haven't. But I'm like, are you here because somebody doesn't want you to play? Is this your only window of time and you don't want to wake people up? Like, what is it? Right?
Yeah,
But what I kind of encourage people to think about in this video is that you being heard is a blessing to the people around you
it is.
because
Mm.
they have heard the same recorded stuff. They've heard the same version of whatever song, but to hear you put it together is special. And for you to think that you are a blessing to your community because you as a human are getting your trumpet or your guitar or your whatever, and you're putting your version of something out into the world, and they need to be used to hearing it. People need to hear music in formation. They just need to hear that. It's like having babies on an airplane. Like, get over yourself, babies travel. Get over yourself, people like learn music, which means scales and everything, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of my why is just like normalizing like amateur music making, music collaboration, people hearing you, practicing, just like it's normal. Like pull it into life, right? Like don't shut up, scroll and watch the professionals. Cause in the
That's
end, the
awesome.
professionals are gonna get replaced by AI if we're not careful, and then everyone's setting up listening to, like, nothing, right?
Right, right. That's a scary thought, but it's true. What about you, Steve? What's your why?
I was going to say we could do a whole podcast on
We
that
could.
AI aspect.
I
Um,
know.
outside of AI as a tool, it's a blessing and curse. It can be depending on how we focus it. But
Yeah.
you know, um, for me currently, my why really is what Olivia had mentioned earlier. Is that it's to be of service, to use my gift. So even though I've been playing for I don't know 40 almost 40 years or something, different instruments. I started out on guitar only for a brief time, but then I went right to bass like 6 months later because I think we had 4 guitarists in our band when we were, however and I didn't even know what a bass was really, but it's like, "Well, we need a bass player." And I was like, "What's that?" And it was
Right.
different, and that's just part of my personality. It's like, if it's different, I wanna do it, I'll do that. And so it started that way, and I was like and I didn't get back into guitar until my early 20s when I was going to school at U of M in Ann Arbor. I got into it as more of a I was taking composition classes and I was a hack piano player. Like I could make some chords and all that. And that was great. But I ended up getting into guitars more, just kind of went back to it. And then I didn't even get into nylon string guitar until my 30s, which is really all I've been playing
Wow.
exclusively ever since.
Mm,
Okay.
And lots of variety from there. And I still play lots of instruments, banjo and mandolin, cello, percussion, and drums. Really, whatever I can make sound out of, I'm just excited about. But all of that started really as entertainment. I mean, there was, especially coming from where I was in terms of, it was rock music, particularly, even though I loved classical and I loved jazz, even though it wasn't cool. I couldn't tell anyone at the time, but, and I loved Duran Duran, but I couldn't tell anyone because I loved Def Leppard, Metallica, and, I like everything. And it's only been like, I love everything and different levels. It's like people, you
yeah,
know,
me
I
too.
we all get something different from different people, and everybody's a different genre of music or some kind of subtype, and it's like that with music for me. And so coming from entertainment, as I went through the years, it hit me as I started to. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden I became aware that music could be more than just entertainment,
Okay.
which is where
Mm,
healing came in. But I started getting into studying what happens in the brain and really what happens emotionally. And
Yeah.
one of the most profound aspects was the idea of entrainment, where a certain beat or pulse is happening, and before you know it, your foot. Now we know this. If I just say it's like, well, duh, yeah, but we're not really aware. We don't think of it, and that all starts way back in the womb, and I would say even before, because of what we come into this world with, as a soul being, and so those properties are already in place. And so once I started to plug that in and dive deeper, it became more about, oh, okay, so this is maybe what it does for me. That's great. How can I extend this to others, as a responsibility in using my God-given gifts and talents. And it's fascinating because Olivia, a number of years ago, I was even down on myself. Really, nobody else was. I've been very fortunate to, outside of some chiding by some close friends, but in your peer group, I've been really supported by family and friends, and even received compliments from strangers and all that. But for some reason,
That's
there was still something within me that I didn't think I was good enough, or I wasn't
yeah.
worthy, and maybe I shouldn't bring this out into the public, or whatever it
Yeah.
might.
There's a vulnerability to it, right?
Exactly. So that's a main thing, that it's not just within, well, it's everywhere, no matter how you're using it or applying it or receiving it. And so as I started to get through that and look at it in different ways, it became okay. This can be surfaced, which is what led me. I wasn't even looking. The whole MHCP program found me,
Mhm.
and I just, as I was reading about it, this was a number of years ago, but it just, like, every paragraph I read, it just resonated with me, like, yes. And I admit the hospital environment didn't attract me, or necessarily doesn't. But of course, I mean, unless you're a crazy surgeon or nurse, they're amazing people.
Yeah.
That's not an environment that I might be saying, like, yeah, I want to go into. But I realize, as you had alluded to earlier, that it's not about me, my gifts and my talents. I'm finally over that. Well, how well am I playing this, or did I play it perfectly, or how does it sound? Any of that stuff. I mean, that's important, sure, to a degree,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
overall, for the benefit and potential service and just the play of, it's not
Yeah.
about me at all. And so
You're
I
having
had to
an
I had to
impact.
work
You
on
get to
releasing
watch
that.
the impact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so to get to that impactful aspect, I had to just say, okay, this is a gift, and then I don't think about those things that are distracting, and I can just be in that moment, in that environment, and with that individual or individuals, no matter what. There's so many different forums that we can bring this into, to be a part of
Mhm.
an impact, or provide an impact, or be a part of an impact.
That's such special work. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal.
And it's something I think we need more of, right? In society right now, we need more live music. We need more healing, more depolarization, more
We
people who
do.
feel confident in expressing themselves in communal ways
And know that it's okay. I mean, think, we have chef food
and
brings
that
us
their voice
together.
matters and or
Yeah,
it's part
that
of the
right,
community, you
right.
know? Yeah. Well,
I
thank
know.
you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Olivia, for being here. Thank you for being founding members. It's been a great to talk with you today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you
Enjoy
so much. It was a really
enjoy
great
the rest of your
conversation.
day.
I learned a lot, and I was Steve. I think your work is totally cool, and I'm excited for it to grow.
Mutual. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. Take care, you guys.
Right.
Bye, guys.
Bye.